So, about a month ago, I moved out from my apartment in Oslo and I moved to Malaga, Spain, all alone. And my ego for sure had a lot to say about that. And my ego got really clever, I must say. She didn't just throw fear at me, like, this is not a good idea, and that. She started to make me see Oslo in completely new ways. Like suddenly, Oslo was the most beautiful city in the world. I just haven't seen it while I was living there for 16 years. And then the thought came, so why do I have to leave if I love my life in Oslo so much? The grass is never greener on the other side, right? So be grateful for what you have. One of the last days in my apartment, I sat on my bed and I just looked at all the boxes in my apartment. I have sold all my furniture. It was basically nothing there but boxes. And I started to cry. I generally had so much grief for the life that I was leaving behind. But somewhere in the middle of that grief, something shifted. I started to feel excitement, and at some point I couldn't really distinguish between whether it was tears of grief or tears of joy. I generally felt like both at the same time, and that was a month ago. And 3 days ago I moved to Malaga, and I already feel so at home here. I feel safe, and I feel so proud of myself for doing this. And the thing I really fear the most, being alone or feeling lonely, I don't feel that at all. And the reason why I'm telling you this story is because it is very in alignment with what we are getting into today. We're going to talk about the voice that are using your gratitude and love against you to keep you stuck, and the grief of leaving your old version behind, and why you have to do it anyway. Because the truth is that you cannot become her while you are still being the old her. So today we are going to talk about what it actually takes to kill the old version of yourself, and why becoming delusional is not only okay, but it might actually be the most important thing you ever do. So let's get into it. You cannot live in two realities simultaneously. That is physically and energetically not possible, because there are multiple versions of you existing right now. You have the version of you that existing right now that are watching this video. That is kind of your current identity, and you have your habits, your patterns, your beliefs, and the frequency. And this is kind of your comfort zone as well. That is what feels familiar to you, what feels safe. And then there is a version of you that you are trying to become, your new identity. Whatever that looks like for you, whether that is a version of you in a loving relationship or with a successful business. And these are kind of opposing frequencies compared to where you are now, most likely. So if you are still thinking, acting, and feeling like your current self, you are not embodying the new one. So you can't expect the results of the new identity whilst you are embodying the identity of the current self. The thing is that our old self feels so safe and comfortable. It is what we know and what feels safe, so it's very natural to default back to those old patterns that we have, even though we want to change. And maybe you even know what you kind of need to do, but you're not doing it because it feels uncomfortable. So you have a one foot in your new life and a one foot in your old one. But here is what most people don't realize about being in this split state. Every single day, through every single choice you make, you cast a vote for either the old self or the new one. And the truth is that most people, including myself for so long, we spend years in this split state and wondering why nothing is changing. Because maybe it genuinely feels like you're doing everything. You have watched endless hours of YouTube videos, you have journaled, you have done affirmations, it can truly feel like you have done everything in your power, and yet you see no results. The hard truth is that doing the work and taking aligned action towards our dreams and goals, that can feel incredibly scary. So instead of taking the actions, we consume the information instead, because that feels safer. And the worst part about that, we trick ourselves into believing that we are actually doing the work. And I am speaking from experience here. I have truly been an expert of this. So believe me when I say that just like consuming the information, that is not doing the work. Because there is a difference between consuming the information and actually embodying and living it, between knowing better and being different. And here is where cognitive dissonance comes in. You know you are meant for more, you can feel it in your entire body, but your current reality doesn't reflect what you know is true. Like nothing in your current reality has shifted yet. And you can generally feel so confused about why that is. And the confusion is basically like the gap between your current identity and the new identity. And you close that gap by embodying the new version of yourself and acting and thinking and feeling like your new identity. Because staying in this split state, that has a price, and we are going to talk about that next. Staying in this split state is honestly so exhausting, because you are in like a constant conflict between yourself. There are like kind of two opposing versions of you pulling you in different directions simultaneously. That is a hard word, isn't it? Simultaneously. And this is where a lot of women experience low motivation, confusion, stagnation, or even overwhelm. And that is not because they are like broken or not meant for more, but because the nervous system is overwhelmed by that inner conflict, by that split state. So why does this split state tend to happen? We have to go back to the ego for explaining this. The ego's entire job is to keep you safe, not happy and not fulfilled, not living your dream reality, but keeping you safe. And safe to your ego means familiar. So the ego will do everything it can to keep you in the old identity, because that is what feels safe and familiar. And it uses your past mistakes as proof of who you are, your old patterns as evidence of what you are capable of, and it uses your history as a ceiling. But what we need to realize is that our past is not evidence of our future. It is only evidence of who you were being then. But it is important to note that our ego is not our enemy, but at the same time, it is not our guideline either. The ego is basically just like a survival mechanism running outdated software. So you probably understand now that the reason why you are defaulting back to your old version isn't weakness. It's basically just familiarity, because the old version of yourself feels like home, it feels safe, you can relax there, you can rest. And the thing is that it's very hard for us to kind of force ourselves to leave a home that feels safe. We have to consciously choose it, and that can be a very hard choice to make. Your reality is always a reflection of your identity, not your vision board or desires or the affirmations you say. It is always your identity. And people approach this usually in the completely wrong order. They think that when I get the relationship, when I get the dream body, when I get the career, the money, then I will feel different. Then I will feel fulfilled. But the truth is that it works in the complete opposite way. You have to feel it first. So identity always comes first, and then reality follows. Always. So you see, you don't necessarily attract what you want, you attract who you are being. It is your frequency, your self-concept, and your dominant emotional state that are creating your reality right now. And this is why two people can want the exact same thing and then get completely different results. So it's not entirely about the desire or the effort, it's about who you are being whilst you are wanting it. So let's bring it back to the self-concept. How you see yourself, what you believe you are worthy of, and what you believe is possible for you, that is your baseline. And your reality will always organize itself around that baseline. So the actual work is entirely internal. Your thoughts, your emotions, and your choices, that is not small or insignificant, unlike what we are told often. They are the signals that you are sending to your subconscious mind about who you are. And it is your subconscious mind that are creating your reality. So you cannot think like the old version of yourself, or feel like the old version, or act like the old version, and then expect a new reality to show up. The internal shifts has to come first. But the painful truth is that change rarely happens before the pain of staying the same outweighs the pain of changing. And that is absolutely not a flaw, that is basically human wiring. But here is the reframe though. The moment of I cannot stay here anymore, that is not a breakdown. It's a threshold. And crossing that threshold, that is what we might call a quantum leap. A sudden shift in identity where you stop being the old version of yourself almost instantaneously. But fear not, you don't have to hit rock bottom to get there, to get a quantum leap. But you do need to take a conscious decision that you are no longer available for the old version of yourself, that the old version of yourself is no longer an option. So how does that actually look like in practice? Killing the old version of yourself might sound dramatic or even violent, but that is also kind of intentional, because what we are talking about here is a real and necessary ending to something that are no longer serving you. I realized that, I don't know if you can hear it, but I realized that filming on a Sunday here in Spain is not a good idea, because there are so many the church bells are ringing all the time. Anyways, let's get going. So even though we acknowledge that we have to kill the old version of ourselves, this is not about blaming or hating the old version. She was doing the very best that she could with what she had. So if anything, we should be very grateful for her, but you can also acknowledge that she cannot come with you where you are going. And that is completely okay. But when we are growing and evolving, another thing we can experience is genuine grief for the old version of ourselves. In my opinion, it is very crucial or important that we allow that grief. You are allowed to mourn the familiar version of yourself, the patterns, the identity, the comfort zone that kept you alive and safe for so long. And it is important to acknowledge her and thank her for getting you this far, but also then choose to let her go. Because here is the hard but also non-negotiable truth: you cannot carry her with you. Every time you go back to your old patterns, to your old thoughts, your old emotional responses, you are in a way resurrecting her. And resurrecting her is the complete opposite of what we are wanting. That is complete opposite of a quantum leap. But what I want you to understand is that killing the old version of yourself is most likely not just like one dramatic event. More likely it is a daily decision you have to make. It's choosing the new thoughts when the old ones are showing up, or choosing a new emotional response even though you want to retreat into your shell, and choosing the aligned action that you know are right for you even though it feels uncomfortable. It's choosing to feel like her even though you have no evidence of it yet. So put in other words, it is basically about drawing a line. A moment where you decide clearly and consciously that you are no longer available for the old version of yourself. And that is not a punishment, that is a declaration for who you are becoming. Remember what I told you in the beginning about moving to Malaga? That is exactly what this looked like for me in practice. So every single time those thoughts showed up, like, you're going to regret this, you're going to be lonely, the grass is never greener on the other side. Every time those thoughts came, I had a choice. I could let the ego win and let the fear drive my thoughts, or I could consciously choose to redirect them into thoughts like, I chose this is in alignment with me, I know that this is the right choice for me because I feel it in my body, and I have dreamt about this for years, and if this is not working, I can always move back. There are like basically nothing to lose. And that is not like a toxic positivity, that is consciously overriding the fears. But at the same time, it is also so important to have grace in this process, because of course it is scary. Like, moving to another country alone is objectively terrifying, and feeling that fear doesn't mean you are weak or that you are doing anything wrong. It simply means that you are human. And it also simply means that your ego is doing her job very, very well. It's doing exactly what it is designed to do. But the distinction here is that you can have compassion for your fear without giving it the will, because you are the driver here. You are the operant power. So when you are starting to make these shifts, expect a resistance and expect the old thoughts to come back louder than before and your habits to pull harder. But that is not a sign that you are doing anything wrong and that is not meant for you. More often than not, it is actually a sign that you are doing exactly the right thing, that you are exactly where you are meant to be. Another thing that are very important to mention is that shame has no place in this process. When you are in the process of changing and stepping into the new version of yourself, you are most probably going to retreat back to your old habits and thoughts and emotional patterns. But shaming yourself for slipping back into your old patterns will actually only anchor you deeper into your old identity. So having grace and patience, that is the real tools here. Remember that you are probably rewiring years or sometimes even decades of conditioning. So it might take some time, and that is completely fine. So have compassion for yourself. But also remember that the identity death is absolutely not the end. It is the beginning of everything. But in order for you to get through this process of changing, you have to become a little delusional. Being delusional has almost gotten a bad reputation, because society often uses being delusional as an insult or almost like a warning. And we are often told things like, don't be delusional, be realistic, stay grounded. And on the surface, that sounds very reasonable, of course. But let's look at what being realistic actually has produced for most people. Let's get back to that split state that we just talked about earlier in this video. When we are trying to change, most people are kind of like defaulting back to their old identity because that feels safe. And we are also like waiting for the evidence to show up before we believe it is possible. We have to see it to believe it. But in my opinion, that is not the groundedness. That is actually just fear dressed up as being grounded or being logical. But here is the reframe. Being delusional in this context means that you are choosing to believe in your new identity even before the evidence shows up. It's deciding that it is inevitable before it is visible. I believe that every woman who has radically changed her life is thinking and acting and feeling like her right now, not after the proofs have arrived. But I want to make one very important distinction here, because being delusional is not the same as blind optimism. Delusion without action is basically just a fantasy. So what we are talking about here is having embodied belief. And that looks like believing in your dreams and in yourself so completely and wholeheartedly that your thoughts and emotions and actions naturally aligns with it. You are not waiting to feel ready. You are choosing to be her now and trusting that the reality will catch up. You have like such a deep conviction in yourself. So if someone calls you delusional for believing in something they cannot see, know that it is more often than not only their own doubts and fears projected onto you. And it has basically nothing to do with you or what you are capable of. If anything, their doubts is actually proof that you are no longer living by your old identity's rules. So let's bring this back to where we started. You cannot serve two masters at the same time. You can't expect the result of your new identity while you're still embodying the old one. And the longer you are trying to stay in this in-between, one foot in your old life and one foot in your new one, the more exhausted and stuck and confused you are going to feel. And that is not because something is wrong with you, but because you are then basically asking two opposing identities to live or coexist in your body simultaneously. And that is simply not possible. But remember that the old version of yourself was absolutely not a mistake. She was a necessity. She got you to exactly this moment, to this level of awareness. And that is very important to acknowledge, to remember. But at the same time, we also have to acknowledge that she cannot come with you where you are going. And somewhere inside of you, you already know that, don't you? So if you take nothing else from this video, let it be this. The shifts that you are seeking doesn't happen after the evidence shows up. It doesn't happen when you are feeling safe or when it is logical or when the people around you approves of it. It happens the moment you are deciding that you are no longer available for the old version of yourself. And that is not delusion. That is probably the most grounded, most sovereign decision that you will ever make in your entire life. If this video resonated, please send it to a woman that you are now going through this change or are in this split or in between phase of her life. She probably needs to hear this. And tell me in the comments, what are one thing your old identity or the old version of yourself did that your new identity no longer are available for? I would love to have a chat about that in the comments with you. And lastly, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, babe.